Zoe Blaskey, thank you so much for coming today. For people who don't know you, do you mind just explaining kind of who you are, what you do, and how we've ended up talking today?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for coming.
I started nearly a decade ago when I first became a mother. I started a platform called Motherkind because what I needed most at that time was my own kindness and understanding from others. And I just felt like there was this huge kind of chasm of knowledge and information. And I'm a trained coach and I'm really into self-development. And I felt like as a woman that became a mother, so much of the conversation was about the baby and feeding and nappy changing, or sort of how to drink your way through how hard it was. And neither of those things really spoke to me. I just felt like everything in my life changed really suddenly. You know this, yeah. Of course, like my relationship, my friendships, my time, my body, and genuinely very few people were talking about it. Certainly not on any of the platforms that I was looking for it, podcasts or on Instagram. So I started it completely as a passion project. I started it selfishly to help myself. I started a podcast first, which is quite unusual. Like most people build a platform and then start podcasts. I didn't know that. I was like, I'll just start a podcast. It'd be really fun. Started it from home. And that was 8 years ago. And it's just sort of exploded into quite a big platform now where I get to speak to thousands of mothers every month about their experience of those early years, really, the sort of first 5 to 7 years where you're really going through this process called matrescence, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Tell me about matrescence.
So matrescence,
I've said it now, so I don't have
so hard to say, honestly. So matrescence it's so fascinating. I'm sure we'll get into like the parallels with menopause, but everyone's heard of adolescence, which is that developmental phase. You know it well with your children, where you go from being a teen to an adult, when your values change, your body changes. It's a real process over years. It's not something that you turn on and turn off overnight. Yeah. And matrescence is exactly that same developmental process, we call it, of becoming a mother. It's not that you give birth and then suddenly you know how to be a mother and you know how to manage everything else in your life around this new role. No, it takes years. Many experts say up to 7 years of integrating this new part of you into your life to kind of feel confident. And it's not about going back in the same way that adolescence isn't about going back. It's about looking forwards and really accepting and learning about who you are becoming as a woman now that you're a mother. So I genuinely thought in those early years that I was doing something wrong because I found it so difficult, and no one again was sort of really talking about it. I was fine with my baby, all the sort of feeding and sleeping. I could handle that. It was how I felt within me. And I learned that word matrescence, and my shoulders dropped. I thought, okay, it's actually supposed to be this time when you question everything. Like I was in corporate work and it didn't fit anymore. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to commute into the city. I want to do something that has purpose and meaning and passion. And my relationship felt really different. What we were doing together felt different. How I wanted to spend my time felt different. And I now know that's completely normal. Like that is the process of matrescence. Yeah. And so I felt so sort of seen by one word. Like I imagine so many people have this experience with your work. I felt so seen. I was like, I've got to start talking more about this.
Have things changed since I was there?
I mean, the word matrescence, yes. Like when I started Motherkind 8 years ago, that was kind of the word was coined in 1976, but it was only a TED talk in 2018, and it was added to the dictionary in 2019. So it's kind of very, very, very new. I would say, I mean, there's been an amazing book called Matrescence by my sort of colleague Lucy Jones, who's done amazing work. There's a few people in Australia doing amazing work, and then us. So it's still really kind of in its infancy as a word, as a concept, as what it means. I'm getting asked a little bit more to go into workplaces to speak about it, which is really exciting. I think it is changing. I feel like particularly the generation under me are far more vocal about what they need, what the experience is really like. And
what do they need? So how do we change this?
I think, again, like the sort of similarities with the, you know, the menopause work that you've been doing and others is much more awareness, you know, much less sort of, I think even in my generation, there was just sort of this acceptance that it's really brutal. You know, you leave hospital probably with a birth injury. Probably, you know, the statistics on birth trauma are shocking. You know, that's definitely the norm again, to have some sort of traumatic birth and have very little support on the other side of that. You know, that is huge. I think the number of women, and you'll be plugged into this as well, the number of women probably undiagnosed PTSD from birth is huge. And then going into, you know, a 6-week check where the focus is very much on the baby. You might be asked a few cursory questions about your mental health. But I think the understanding that operates on a scale, like I would never have fit the criteria really for postnatal depression, but I was absolutely struggling through my matrescence. And so I think just normalising that idea, you know, and even calling it, you know, mental health, I feel like it's just that experience that so many people go through. It's really normal to feel a dip in your confidence, in your identity, in your kind of joy and you know, you're also hugely sleep deprived and exhausted, you know, which we know what that does to the brain. You know, it's really, really difficult. So I feel like the generation under us are kind of far more less accepting of that as just the normal experience. And I think are going to demand far more support. I'm really excited to see the changes. There's an organisation called the Dad Shift who are doing some great work around trying to get that paternity leave up, which is so, so, so important. Because we know that those early weeks, those first sort of early months really set up the dynamic as well in the home, which is where a lot of the inequality in caregiving and mental load comes in. Because if you're the one who's at home with the baby, you get to know the routines, you get to know what those cues are. And it looks like instinct. It looks like, oh, okay, well, that's the mum. She knows what that baby wants. It's actually just the hours and hours and hours of learning so that you can identify a cry. But that's any gender can do that. And I think if dads were more present at the, you know, for longer, if they were able to, because of the policies of the workplace, that would make a huge difference. So I think there's a lot of change coming.
How, I mean, apart from paternity leave, like how else can we fix it?
We have to develop this skill of managing our energy and knowing it's quite unique to each of us. You know, what is it that it gives us energy and what is it that's draining my energy, and how can I start to design a little bit where I do have that control and autonomy. How can I start to do more of those things? And often it's really simple little things that we can do.
Like what?
Well, for me, a massive one for me is procrastinating on a decision. So if I know that, or even something tiny like, you know, you mentioned your NCT group. If I've got a group of girls on WhatsApp, and if I know I need to get back to them on a date or something, and I'm not doing it, I can almost feel the tab like running in the back of my head. And it really drains my energy. Yeah. And when I notice this, I've got this new rule for myself. It's like if it takes less than 2 minutes, I do it in the moment.
Right.
Whether it's replying to something, you know, quickly putting something away, or, you know, firing off a quick email, I do it. I don't let those little things stack up.
You're right. That is a really...
And it has made a massive difference to my energy.
Analogy, like, is like having multiple...
Well, I think about the iPhone, you know, when you open it and you haven't realised you've got like 30 tabs open and you have
mine's got about 500
okay,
open.
That stresses me out. You have to flick up and close them because you can see the battery. We are exactly the same. So the phone analogy really works because it's almost like, what is your charge? Like, what plugs you in? And for me, something that really plugs me in is like 5 minutes with the sun on my face. Like that, I'm like some sort of solar panel. I can feel that filling me up. Same as like quick movement for 5 minutes. And there's all, you know, these are all researched things and they all have the data behind them as to why they work. But the thing is as mothers, particularly in those early years, we've got to know what these are for us. Because so many mums will say to me, I'll get 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe even half an hour. And I'll spend the first 25 minutes of my half an hour thinking, should I put a wash on? Should I read a book? Should I call a friend? Should I just lie on the floor? What should I, you know, you almost go into that. I have no idea what is going to help me the most in this pocket, because those pockets of time when you have young children are so rare and precious. And so knowing, okay, I know what I need to do. If I do this thing, I know it's going to give me energy. Or if I stop doing this thing, I know it's going to give me energy. Is so really, really, really powerful. It's so simple. I call it, it's not my phrase. The phrase is energy blueprint. I actually took it from Stanford business school, they teach it to their execs there, and I've modified it and made it much simpler for mothers.
Because you never know when you're going to get that time either, do you? It's not like you're at work and you know that you're going to have your lunch break between 11 and 11 or 12 and 12:10 or something like that. You don't have, there's nothing, nothing, or a commute. At least you know you've got your commute and you can kind of have a little bit of thinking time. Whereas with small children, you have no idea when you're going to be have those demands, or when you're going to have and you put them to bed and then 2 minutes later they're awake again, and gosh.
Exactly. And I sort of I talk a lot about this idea of sort of self-care, and why actually it's not that helpful a phrase or a concept when you've got little ones, because it feels like it's become, you know, quite commoditized, that it's something that you have to buy or do for a long time or spend money on, and kind of money and time are those two things that very quickly get short in supply when you have little ones. So I sort of reject that concept as a solution for the stress of it, and replace it with this idea of energy management, where it's like these kind of 5-minute things. What can you do in 5 minutes? Something that you're going to add in or take away, like just getting those little jobs done really quickly and not letting them build up. What are those for you? And then how can you start to build them in your day so it's totally manageable, but it really does make a difference? Because energy is the number one thing that you need to get through those early years.
If you're enjoying this conversation so far, please do press the follow button on whatever platform you're listening on. Please do share it with a friend who you think would benefit too. So I think there's loads of parallels, aren't there, between this stage of life and the stage of life that I talk about a lot. Do you have things? So I know that you're talking about it a lot, but is anybody else, or are you still like in that very early stage where are things changing? Or
I feel like they are definitely not at the rate that we've seen conversations around perimenopause and menopause. Definitely not. I think we will get there with matrescence and early motherhood. But there are some amazing individuals and organisations talking about it. It's definitely not just me, but I feel like we really need that sort of groundswell. But I'm fascinated how you think the kind of menopause, you know, I'm at one end with matrescence, you're at the kind of other end with menopause. How is that going? Is that still having this huge change in awareness and support?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I think, you know, so one of the biggest goals that we had, you know, back in the day was raising awareness of perimenopause and menopause enough so that women knew what was happening to them, and the people around them also knew what was happening to them. And I think that's achieved, really. I think that I don't think you'd find very many people that you said, you know, I work in menopause, and they would be like, oh, what's that? You know, whereas back in the day, that's literally what it was like. It was like people.
Well, that's like me now. I'll say I support women through their matrescence, and people will be like, what is that?
Yeah. So I think, so there's clearly, I mean, we've definitely made great strides there. I think, is it where I would have hoped, or where I'd have really hoped it would be? Probably not. And it's not. Some people would just expect it's from men, with a kind of backlash from men, but it's not always from men. It's from women as well, particularly those that have kind of gone into menopause and they're like, but I don't know what all the fuss was about. Like, why don't you just kind of shut up and put up with it like we all did? Which is not massively supportive.
I get a lot of those comments, women who sailed through it, and they're like, what are you complaining about? And I think it's not, I think it's that sort of word, complaining. It's very, we're not complaining about menopause and matrescence. What we're trying to do is open up a conversation that drives awareness, that, just as you said, supports people in feeling more seen and more held. So, of course, what I want is for people to sail through their matrescence and not ever need to pick up my book. Like, that is ideal for me. But if someone doesn't have that experience, and if someone didn't have that experience in menopause, thank God that your book and your work exists now, so that people can pick it up. But I think it's very difficult. Social media is such a strange beast, isn't it? And I think those voices become really polarized really quickly.
I think, but you know, it's society, the way that women have been positioned in society, you know, by the patriarchy, and how so are women struggling because they've gone back to work, and should they really just be in the home? You know, you can just imagine that kind of backlash. It's like, well, you know, why are you complaining? You wanted to be able to be afforded a career, and now you're complaining that you can't have
what happens in the motherhood space, but particularly as you know, unlike menopause, you know, is a choice.
Yeah.
You know, many people want to become mothers who can't as well, you know, and there's many variations among that. But essentially, you know, not every woman becomes a mother. And so lots of people will say, well, this was your choice. Yeah. That's a lot of what happens online, which is insane to me, because people choose to become, you know, CEOs or doctors, and you don't say, well, you're not having any more training or support or an executive coach because you chose this. Yeah. You would. That's insane. Just because we choose something doesn't negate the need for support through a huge challenge and transition.
I suppose there's probably an overlap, isn't there? There will be a big overlap, especially as women wait longer to have their children.
Yeah,
you could have a matrescence and a perimenopause.
Yes, many women
at the same time
talk about that, or you might get a year's respite and then you're straight into perimenopause.
Is that a perfect storm?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Then you would need both our books, both our podcasts.
Yeah, but probably the toolkit is there's an overlap as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, support structures in place, and lifestyle, and stress triggers, and all of those kind of things you can use to manage both.
Absolutely. And this idea of kind of self-compassion, I call it getting on your own side. Like really just thinking to yourself, if I was going to be a friend to myself through this really hard transition in my life, what would that look like? I might never have been a friend to myself in the past. I've probably been quite critical, actually, to myself. Lots of women have that experience. But through this transition, whether it's matrescence or menopause, how could I actually be a friend to myself? What would I do differently? You know, what support would I put in place? What help would I ask for? Where would I just give myself a break? Where would I, you know, let things slide for just a minute so that I could give back to myself? I think that skill probably holds people really well through both those huge transitions.
It's a very good tip, isn't it? Because we are so kind and supportive to our friends, but don't give ourselves the same. The narrative is completely different.
It's completely different. And this is another one of those super simple reframes that takes like 20 seconds, which is, you know, if a good friend was in exactly the same situation, what would they say? I used it the other day. I was walking through my house and there was just piles of washing everywhere. There was crap everywhere. You know, I looked in every room and I was like, there's 30 things that need my attention in that room. It was just, and I just was like, Zoe, you are so not on top of anything. Like, what is wrong with you? And then I used this tool. You know, I'm always using my own work. Basically, it's a selfish endeavour. My whole job. What would I say to a good friend? And if my friend, what I'd say to her, you know, you're really present with your girls. You are there for them emotionally whenever they need you. You are running a business. You're out there making a difference. You know, you're making them some food. You know, and I could just keep laddering it up to all these things that I am doing, and it's just mess. It doesn't matter. It's just laundry. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You never subscribed to doing all this perfectly. You never subscribed to having the perfect home. So just let that go. I'd say that to a friend so quickly, so easily. And in that moment, I was able to say that to myself. And it changed the trajectory of my day, because otherwise, if I'd started my day with that, you can't cope, what's wrong with you? I would have taken that energy into every interaction, and it would have, you know, it compounds, doesn't it? So, you know, I love the idea that just a 1 degree shift in one different thought really can change, you know, just like a plane, it really changes the destination and how you feel.
You probably get better at it, don't you, as you get practiced at it?
Yeah, so the neural pathways get stronger and stronger. You know, every thought we get to practice an old worn groove, as I call it, you know, which is you can't cope, what's wrong with you, you're not doing it right. Particularly difficult if the children are also telling you those things. Yeah, then that can become like, you know, really sort of coloured everything that we do through our days and lives. And so, yeah, just chipping away at that and trying a new thought. And it feels super awkward to start with. That's just a sign that it's new and that's okay. There's something called negativity bias, which is our brain is wired to focus on what's wrong. So our brain will always notice what is wrong. because it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, right? What was going right was never going to save our life. We had to become hypervigilant to what could go wrong. But now we don't really live in that extreme way. Most of us, don't need that level of hypervigilance. And so we have to get good at countering that negativity bias by focusing on what's going right and what we have done. And most mothers that I speak to by 8 a.m. have done 50 things. But we just completely, haven't we, right? We've got up, got the kids up, the uniforms out, the breakfasts are done, we made different breakfasts, we've remembered the preferences of each child, we've probably replied to a colleague about an email about a work meeting at 9 o'clock. We've probably emailed a teacher about something, we've remembered the kit, whatever it is, for the dog, we probably have done more than 50 things actually. And we do not notice that. We notice that we snapped once when we asked our child to put their shoes on. We forget all the things that we have done, all the lovely moments we have had that morning or that day, the great things we've done. We just ignore all of that. And we have to develop this skill of noticing what we have. I call it getting on your own side.
Brilliant.
Got to do
it. Brilliant. Zoe, can I go through a couple of questions with you? And so the first one is from Natalie, who says, I would love to ask her, as in Zoe, about how to manage conflict between myself and my kids, aged 5 to 15. For context, I'm perimenopausal and the mood swings that have come with it leave me constantly bickering with my kids, particularly my 2 girls. And afterwards, I'm left with masses of shame. I hate letting my calming, loving parenting style shatter into shouting and chaos. What advice do you both have to stop this endless cycle?
The first thing I would say is self-compassion. So, you are perimenopausal and you'll be able to talk way more to that and what that means. The second thing I'd say is just what we were talking to. I will bet that if that person has a foundation of calm, connected parenting, it is definitely not that she is shouting at her kids 100% of the time. I'm willing to bet that, not knowing the situation. So it sounds like she's focusing a lot on those moments because it probably does feel so alien to her. There's quite a lot with, shouting is often and snapping is often the last straw. I think about it, when you reverse your car and it starts out with a green band and it's like beep, and then it goes amber and it's like beep, 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 and then it goes red and it's beep, beep, beep. Anger is exactly the same. So by the time we are screaming at our kids, there have been many beeps up until that point that we have ignored. The first big one is our own needs. So one of the biggest triggers for anger, maternal anger, is we are completely depleted and we have ignored our own needs. So that's a sort of big picture. I would really love to ask that person, like, what are you doing for you? How are you resourcing you? Because the resourced woman is definitely the able to manage anger better. So that's a sort of big picture. The first thing I'd say. The second thing is, what are those triggers that you're about to lose it? Is it a particular subject like I had with my little girl's friendships? Is it, a trigger around leaving mess around the home or not doing homework? Or what is it? Because it won't be everything. No. It never is. It'll be a trigger. And I would really encourage this woman to, take that and do exactly as I described. Like, why is this bothering me so much? What is it? What is it? And there will be absolutely something in there. There will be something in there for her. And the third thing is to get to know your bodily cues. So everyone has a physiological response to anger before we have that sort of shout. For me, it's a tightening in my chest. I can feel it. And I'm now able to name it. I'll say, girls, mummy's about to shout. And I'm also naming it for myself as I do that. I'm giving myself a little bit of distance. And I'll say, mummy's about to shout. I can feel my chest tightening. It's really bothering me that I've asked you 3 times now and you're ignoring me. I will then take a moment, take a breath, and remember that I'm meant to be the sort of parent here, like the steady ship. And me shouting is only going to result in, for my little ones, them crying and us both spiraling. So it's then taking that breath, taking that 20 seconds. I love a straw breath, which is like a deep breath in, and then you pierce your lips. You just breathe out as long as you can, almost like you're whistling. It's very, very regulating. And then I would think, right, I need to change track here. They're not listening to me. And then most parents know how to change track and get something done. So I think it's everything on that sort of big picture question, which is how are you meeting your needs? Are you depleted? All the way through to sort of in the moment, what can you do? The other thing is that it is really normal to shower your kids. Everybody does it. So it's about self-forgiveness, relinquishing that guilt as well. And if you can catch yourself, if you're shouting 8 times a day and you can get that down to 6 times a day, that is a win.
And it is really very annoying when you ask somebody to do things 5
and they
times
ignore you.
and they completely ignore you, isn't it?
Yes.
It is very annoying.
Yes, it is. And that's
okay.
That's that validation
Yeah.
piece. Yeah, but it's not getting rid of that. That is annoying. That's never not going to be annoying. It's how we respond to that, which is, we can have a bit more control over that. Then sounds like she feels that she has. It sounds like she feels like she's a bit out of control of that. And she definitely wants to change that, but she's struggling with how.
Yeah. Brilliant. That is brilliant advice. And then finally, we've got a question from Annette who says, I was such a hormonal mess during pregnancy. I used to cry all the time, and this didn't really stop until my son was 3 years old. I'm now 43, and it makes me wonder if I'm likely to become an emotional wreck once the hormonal roller coaster that is perimenopause hits me. What do you think?
You're best to answer that.
I think that anybody that has had a kind of, whether it's from hormones, whether it's circumstances, but anxiety or low mood, or has felt kind of their emotions aren't in control, I think is probably more likely to experience that in the times of other lack of control, so hormonal chaos in perimenopause. It doesn't always. I mean, everybody is different, and we see women who have worse PMS, who also have worse kind of postnatal experiences, but not always. So I think it's worth. I think the most important thing is having that kind of self-awareness, which she clearly already has. And if you are feeling like you are dipping, to do something about it sooner rather than later.
Yep.
I think that would be my advice. So we can't predict these things, and some women are lucky and some women are less lucky, but by having that self-awareness and seeking help before it gets too bad is what I would say.
Yeah, it's that awareness. It's just that awareness piece again, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that we don't think that it's us and we're doing it wrong, and we can get help quicker.
And I suppose you can warn people that are close to you, but saying, I'm worried that this is going to happen to me. If you see anything,
that's it. Because sometimes you can't see it. Lots of people tell me about that in their matrescence. They're like, I actually couldn't see how far away from how I usually feel I was until I get out of it. Do you hear that in menopause as well? Perimenopause?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People just don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then they start going down all sorts of dark places. Am I dementing? Am I ever going to feel better? Is this me for the rest of my life? And when somebody kind of gives you that recognition, it's like, have you thought about this? Well, I think people are nervous about making that suggestion, particularly about perimenopause, because are they making an assumption about your age or something? Is this insulting? But I think it's always worth taking that risk with people and saying that, I think have you thought about this being the underlying cause? Because when the penny drops and you can go and get help, like, you can make a massive difference, and all of a sudden, back on track. And so it's it's worth. I think it's worth giving people the kind of permission to suggest that to you. Zoe, thank you so much. That was a massive education. I did not know about anything. I just had, it was all well after my time, and I wish I had known. I wish I'd known at the time, because it would have made things a lot easier. Permission to not be doing things perfectly, and not that I'm particularly a perfectionist, but I think also, and to ask for help as well.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much. I loved it.
Oh, thank you. If I didn't manage to answer your question today, or if you have any other questions, then please feel free to follow me on Instagram. I do a lot of educational posts and videos. My handle there is Dr._Naomi Potter, and hopefully you will find the answers to your questions there. Alternatively, on my website, which is menopausecare.co.uk, there is a big information hub, and you should be able to find your answers there as well.